yours.
Okay, very good afternoon to one and all. Okay, thank you for logging in on time. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, here. Okay. Right. Today we are going to study the book of Proverbs. And just give me a minute. Let me see my slide here. Because it's blocking the words. Okay. And the book of Proverbs is a guide for living well in God's word. And it's a book full of wisdom from trusting God. And I give you a brief outline of this book of Proverbs in the Old Testament. And it's under the book of, under this category of poetry. Some of you are new Christians. You see, what happened is the Old Testament is divided into 5 divisions: the law, which is the first 5 books, the history, and all these kings and famous prophets, the poetry, and then we have the prophets, the major prophets and the minor prophets. So the book of Proverbs fall under this book of poetry, under this division poetry. And there are 5 books of poetry, and out of the 5 books, 3 books are wisdom books. They are the book on Job, Proverbs, and Ecclesiastes. We know that the book of Job is written, is assumed to be written by Moses. The book of Psalm, King David, and a few other psalmists. And Proverbs, King Solomon, and others, there's Agur and Lemuel. Ecclesiastes and Song of Song by King Solomon. So King Solomon has written 3 books of wisdom. So naturally, he is definitely regarded as the wisest man in ancient Israel. And in the book of 1 Kings 3:5-15, and this is a brief outline here, but we will look into the verses later. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon during the night in a dream, and God said, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." And Solomon asked for wisdom rather than wealth or long life. So let us look through the verses. Let me read this one. 1 Kings 3:5-15. Verse 5. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon during the night in a dream, and God said, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." And Solomon answered, "You have shown great kindness to your servant, my father David, because he was faithful to you and righteous and upright in heart. You have continued this great kindness to him and given him a son to sit on his throne this very day." So he's talking about himself. Verse 7. Now, Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David, but I am only a little child and do not know how to carry out my duties. Your servant is here among the people you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to count or number. So give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. For who is able to govern this great people of yours? So it's very clear he wanted wisdom from God, to a discerning heart to know what is right and wrong so that he can govern his people. And then the Lord was pleased that Solomon has asked for this. So God said to him, "Seeing you have asked for this and not for long life or wealth for yourself, nor have asked for the death of your enemies, but for discernment." Very important. Discernment is something that we need. In administering justice, I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and a discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be. Wow. So he's the only one who has this wisdom. Moreover, I will give you what you have not asked for. both wealth and honor. So God has given him additional wealth and honor, so that in your lifetime, you will have no equal among kings. Wow, another good thing that God has blessed him. And if you walk in obedience, that's a condition, to me, and keep my decrees and command as David your father did, I will give you a long life. So this is another important point, that we need to walk in obedience and keep his command as long as we live. Then Solomon awoke and he realized it has been a dream. He returned to Jerusalem, stood before the ark of the Lord's covenant, and sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. Then he gave a feast for all his court. So this is an outline of how Solomon received wisdom from God. Very interesting. And in the book of 1 Kings 4:32, verse 3-32, because he's so wise, he has written 3,000 proverbs. And only 35 proverbs are in the Bible. So out of the 3,000, 35 in the Bible. And 1,005 songs. And there's one, the best one is Song of Songs, also in the Bible. So he has many collection of proverbs and songs. And he also wrote Ecclesiastes, which is also another interesting book. Vanity of vanities. Life is full of vanities. Let's not go on to this book. Okay, now we come to, we have studied the book of Psalm. What is the difference between the book of Psalm and the book of Proverbs? Both are equally important books. The book of Psalm is about King David, and the book of Proverbs, more of his son, King Solomon. The book of Psalm, it talks about how we get along with God, and it's all the narrations of King David, how he worships and praises God. It's a relation between him and God. God is there, in a sense, it's his expression who God is. And these are all promises that we can claim in the book of Psalm. These two are my favorite, Psalm 23 and 91. It's good to memorize these two verses, these two Psalms, full of gem in these two Psalms. And you can claim it as promises from God. The book of Proverbs is not a book of law, neither is it a book of prophecy or promises. It's not a book of promises, but it's a book full of wisdom for our daily living on earth. It's how we relate to each other with fellow men. Not, well, the book of Psalm is with God, but this one is with fellow men. So these are the two differences. I mean, there are more. I just highlight only these two. Now, I'd like to give you an outline on the book of Proverbs. It's a book that guides us to apply godly wisdom in order to live well. Well, what do you mean by live well? Later you will know what are all the wisdom that help us to live well. The book admonishes us, these are the few things that I've listed, to have the fear of God, not to terrorize him, but to give him all reverence and awe and respect. To place God first in our life and in everything or situation. God is always in the equation. It's always everything that happens. We want everything that we want to put God first. Number 3, how to get along with fellow men in a way that pleases God. To watch our speech, our actions, and our thoughts. How we can do that is all written in the book of Proverbs that pleases God, that is pleasing to God. And finally, how we walk through life, dealing with the many challenges in the different seasons of our lives. So it actually covers a lot in our life. It's a very good book that all of us should read it There are 31 chapters. I would like to encourage each and every one of us to read at least one chapter per day, as when there are 31 days in a month. So you can actually cover it very fast, one chapter a day in a month, and you can actually repeat it. So the book of Proverbs, there's so much gem in it. Right? Now, I will just show you a little a video on the overall on the book of Proverbs so that you have a better understanding. Hey, why cannot play? Can hear?
The book of Proverbs. The word proverb
Yes.
typically refers to a short, clever saying that offers some kind of wisdom, and this book has a lot of those. But they're almost all in the center section of the book, chapters 10 to 29. But there is way more going on in the book of Proverbs, especially at the beginning, chapters 1 through 9, and the conclusion, chapters 30 and 31. The book's been designed with an introduction, chapter 1, verses 1 through 9, and it first of all links this book to King Solomon. Now remember the story in 1 Kings chapter 3. Solomon had asked God for wisdom to lead Israel well. And so Solomon became known as the wisest man in the ancient world. And we're told in 1 Kings chapter 4 that he wrote thousands of proverbs and poems and collected knowledge about plants and animals. So Solomon was like the fountainhead of Israel's wisdom literature. So while not all the material in this book is written by him personally, he is where Israel's wisdom tradition began. The introduction says that by reading this book, you too can gain wisdom. Now, wisdom for most of us means knowledge, but the Hebrew word chokhmah means much more than just mental activity. It refers to action also. So think skill or applied knowledge. This is why back in the book of Exodus, chapter 31, it was artists and craftsmen in Israel who were said to have chokhmah. So the purpose of this book is to help you develop a set of practical skills for living well in God's world. And this gets linked with another key idea in the introduction, the fear of the Lord. Now, fear here is not about terror. It's about a healthy sense of reverence and awe for God and about my place in the universe. It's a moral mindset that recognizes I am not God and that I don't get to make up my own definitions of good and evil and right and wrong. Rather, I need to humble myself before God and embrace God's definition of right and wrong, even when that's inconvenient for me. Now, this introduction leads us into the first main section of the book, chapters 1 through 9, which also doesn't contain short one-liner proverbs. Rather, what we find here are 10 speeches from a father to a son about how the son should listen to wisdom and cultivate the fear of the Lord and live accordingly, which means a life of virtue and integrity and generosity, all of which lead to success and peace. The father warns his son also about folly and evil and stupid decisions that will breed selfishness and pride, all leading to ruin and shame. And so the son should make the pursuit of wisdom and the fear of the Lord his highest goal in life. And this way of thinking, it forms the moral logic of this entire book. Now, these speeches from the Father also clue us into what biblical wisdom literature is and how it's different from other parts of the Bible. These books explore how to live well in God's world, but wisdom is not the same as law, like what Moses gave Israel at Mount Sinai. And it's not the same as prophecy, divine speech to God's people. Rather, wisdom literature has the accumulated insight of God's people through the generations about how to live in a way that honors God and others. And so, through the book of Proverbs now, these human words about wisdom have been put together as God's word and wisdom to his people, which connects to the other thing you find in chapters 1 through 9. There are 4 poems from Lady Wisdom. Here, wisdom has been poetically personified as a woman who calls out to humanity to pay attention and to seek her. Wisdom says that she is woven into the fabric of the universe, and so wherever you see people making wise decisions, they are relying on her. So you see someone being generous or having sexual integrity or upholding justice. They are drawing on wisdom. These Lady Wisdom poems, they're a creative, poetic way of exploring this idea that we live in God's moral universe. and that goodness and justice are objective realities that we ignore to our own peril. And so fearing the Lord, living wisely, it's living along the grain of the universe. Now together, these two sets of speeches from the Father and Lady Wisdom, they make a powerful claim about this book, that you're not simply reading good advice, you're reading God's own invitation to learn wisdom from previous generations. And so in the next section of the book, chapters 10 through 29, we find hundreds of ancient proverbs, and they apply wisdom and the fear of the Lord to every life topic you could imagine: family, work, neighborhood, friendship, sex, marriage, money, anger, forgiveness, alcohol, debt, everything. And these are all filtered through the value system of Proverbs 1 through 9. Now, these Proverbs, they're all pretty short, they're easy to memorize, and actually this section of the book is meant to become a reference work that you return to time and time again throughout the years, which raises some important issues in learning how to read these Proverbs. First of all, Proverbs are by nature about probabilities. So you fear the Lord and you make wise, good choices, things will likely go well for you. And if you don't fear the Lord, you're foolish, your life will likely not go so well. Now, that is all often true, but not always. Which leads to the next point, that Proverbs are not promises. They're not formulas for success. So, some Proverbs, for example: the fear of the Lord prolongs your life, but the years of the wicked are cut short. Or, train up a child in the way they should go, and when they're old, they won't turn from it. So yes, fearing God, being a moral person, will most likely lead to a better, longer life, and raising your kids in a stable, loving home does set them up well, but there are no guarantees. Lots of things can and often do go wrong in our world. And so lastly, Proverbs by nature focus on the general rule, but not the exceptions, which are many. And the wisdom books actually aren't ignorant of that. The exceptions are what the other wisdom books, Job and Ecclesiastes, are all about. And together, these acknowledge that life is too complex for simple formulas, which is why we need all of the wisdom books together to get the bigger picture. This all leads to the final section of the book, two large collections of poems. First, poems from a man named Agur, who begins by acknowledging his own ignorance and folly and his great need for God's wisdom. And then Agur discovers that divine wisdom has been given to him in the scriptures, which teach him how to live well. And so Agur is put before us as like a model reader of the book of Proverbs, somebody who's always open to hearing God's wisdom through the scriptures. The final poems are connected to a man named Lemuel. He's a non-Israelite king, and he passes on the wisdom that was given to him by his mom. It's guidance for being a wise and just leader. And then the final poem is an acrostic or an alphabet poem where each line begins with a new letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And the entire poem's about the woman of noble character. It depicts a woman who lives according to the wisdom of Proverbs and stands like a model of someone who takes God's wisdom and then translates it into practical decisions in everyday life, at work or at home, in her family and in her community. So the book opened with words from a father to a son about listening to Lady Wisdom, and so now the book closes by offering the words of a mother to her son about a woman who lives wisely. The book of Proverbs is for every person in every season of life. It's a guide for living wisely and well in God's good world. And that's what the book of Proverbs is all about.
Wow. How do I go back? Hang on.
You close this one first. The cross at the back, the top.
It's already closed, no?
Oh.
Hang on. What happened? Should have tried out.
Start share again.
Okay. Let me stop. Now I'm going to share on Proverbs 3, but let's look through Proverbs 1 and 2, a general idea. Proverbs 1 is children, do listen to the elders and take their advice. Continue to learn and choose to do what is right, just, and fair. It's warning against rejecting wisdom. how to attain wisdom, and fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. So this is on Proverbs 1 and Proverbs 2. Benefits of receiving wisdom, the difference between those who trust God for wisdom and those who live without God. This is just the outline. And now we concentrate on chapter 3, which I have also divided into 3 sessions. Verses 1 to 10 is about Solomon speaking to his son, or like a father advising his son to write rightly with God. And all the command that is given also followed by rewards. So this is verses 1 to 10, which is I have highlighted in orange color. Verses 11 to 18 is the Proverbs or saying of Solomon. Verses 19 to 35, all the precepts or value, all the wise living before God and man. So let us go into the verses. This one, my son, walk rightly with God. Solomon advises his son. Walk rightly with God by valuing his word, which is in verse 1 to 4. 5 to 6, walk rightly with God by trusting him. Very important to trust God. 7 to 8, walk rightly with God with a humble heart, with a humble and reverent life. No pride, we always humble ourselves. Verse 9 to 10, verses 9 to 10 is walk rightly with God in regard to your possession. Okay, now let us jump into this first section, which is the orange color. The verses say, my son, do not forget my teaching, but keep my commands in your heart. So what is the reward? For they will prolong your life many years and bring you peace and prosperity. So we keep our command, God will prolong our life and bring us peace and prosperity. Number verse 3, let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. So here, let people see that you have faithfulness and love. To show people, let's just bind them around your neck and make sure it's in your heart. Forever you treasure it. What is the reward? That you will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and man. Continue with verse 5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him and he will make your path straight. So this is a very famous verse that we always memorize. Chapter 3, verse 5 to 6. Trust in the Lord and God and not lean on your own understanding. God will make our path straight. This is the reward. Verse 7. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. The reward is it will bring health to your body and nourishment to your bones. Verse 9. Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of your crop. And the reward is then your barn will be filled to overflowing and your vats will brim over with new wine. So here again, we always been advised and been told that we give the first fruit to our God, not the leftover. And God will always ensure that we will have enough. So this is verse 1 to verse 10. It's about God. It's about Solomon advising his son. Now we come to 11 to 18, which is the saying of Solomon. Okay, verse 11. My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline and do not resent his rebuke. Why? Because the Lord disciplines those he loves. As a father, the son he delights in. So we shouldn't be angry if God disciplines us because he loves us. He wants to discipline us to go to the right path. Verse 13. Blessed are those who find wisdom those who gain understanding. For she is more profitable than silver and yields better returns than gold. So this she is actually referred to wisdom. Verse 15, she is more precious than rubies. Nothing you desire can compare with her. Again, she, this pronoun is actually referring to wisdom. Wisdom is more precious than rubies. There's nothing you desire can actually compare with wisdom. Verse 16, long life is in the right hand, and in her left hand are riches and honor. So can you imagine wisdom will give you long life and give you riches and honor. Her ways are pleasant and all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to those who take hold of her. Those who hold her fast will be blessed. Why tree of life? Because as in the Genesis, tree of life is something that is a tree that gives us fruits. Okay, so hold on to wisdom and your life will be blessed. Now we come to the final division, which is verses 19 to 35, and this is all precept of Solomon. He asks us to value wise living before God and man. Okay, let us see what are the wisdom from him. Okay, this one, verse 19. By wisdom, the Lord laid the earth's foundations. By understanding, he set the heavens in place. By his knowledge, the watery depths were divided, and the clouds let drop the dew. Here, 19 to 20, it talks about God's wisdom. God has created the heaven and the earth. His understanding has set the heavens in place. Everything is in sync with everything. God is so creative. Everything is in proper order. And by his knowledge, the watery depths were divided, the sea were divided, and the clouds were let drop the dew. So this is the wonder of God's creation. Verse 21, my son, do not let wisdom and understanding out of your sight. Preserve sound judgment and discretion. Because wisdom will give us discretion, will give us good judgment, sound judgment. There will be life for you and ornament to grace your neck. It means what? If you have wisdom, you will receive honor. It's like people having an ornament on their neck, like a chain that's given to somebody. Okay? When you want to honor someone, sometimes you honor the person or you give the person something to wear over his neck. That he receive an honor or a reputation, that this person is highly respected. So verse 23, then you will go on your way in safety and your foot will not stumble. So here is protection. God will protect us. Verse 24, when you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. Wow, that is nice. I like that. So you have good sleep every night. No need to worry. And good sleep means you have good health. When you can't sleep, you won't have good health. Okay, verse 21. Sorry, this is finished. 27. And God and Solomon also teach us, do not withhold good from those to whom it is due. So let us do good to those who need it when it's in your power to act. Okay, so this is what another good teaching. Do not say to your neighbor, come back tomorrow and I will give it to you, when you already have it with you. So do not procrastinate, do not delay. When you want to do something good, do it right away, because you do not know what will happen tomorrow. So verse 29, do not plot harm against your neighbor. Do not cause harm to people or to anybody. Do not accuse anyone for no reason when they have done you no harm. Don't go around gossiping. Don't say things that is not correct, that's not true, that cause people harm. And finally, do not envy the violent or choose any of their ways. For the Lord detests the perverse. These are all not good. So don't do that, but take the upright into his confidence. So God delights in the upright and detests the perverse. Verse 33, the Lord's curse is on the house of the wicked, but he blesses the home of the righteous. He mocks proud mockers, but shows favor to the humble and oppressed. So this is something, another reminder, always be humble and not be proud. The wise will inherit honor, but fools will get only shame. So there is a lot to learn from chapter 3. I hope all of us will remember all this teaching. As I have said, let us learn and memorize one chapter per day, because there are 31 chapters in the book of Proverbs. And finally, I just want to highlight a few things in the Bible, in the book of Proverbs. On the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. So we need to have the fear of God, to have reverence and awe and respect of God. Proverbs 1-7. The fear of God is the beginning of knowledge, but fool despise wisdom and discipline. Don't be like the fool. Proverbs 9-11. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. For through me, your days will be many, and your years will be added to your life. Proverbs 4:6-9. Do not forsake wisdom, and she will protect you. Love her, love wisdom, and she will watch over you. Wisdom is supreme. Therefore, get wisdom. Though it costs all you have, get understanding. Esteem her, and she will exalt you. Embrace her, and she will honor you. She will set a garland of grace on your head and present you with a crown of splendor. Wow. So these are all good proverbs that ask us to value wisdom. Finally, here's Romans 1:21-22. Some people may know God, okay? For although they knew God, they neither glorify him as God, nor give thanks to him, but their thinking become futile, and their foolish hearts will darken. Although they claim to be wise, they can become fools. So this is another teaching that we must always give thanks to God and glorify God in all circumstances. And so the overview of the book of Proverbs is, if you keep loyalty and faithfulness, writing them on the tablets of your heart, God and other people will favor you. Again, the speaker said to fear God and not to trust in your own insight, acknowledging his supremacy at every moment. In order to be wise, you can't be wise in your own eyes. So we must always look up to God for wisdom and not our own wisdom or our own knowledge. So what is the final take-home point is very simple. The fear of the God is the beginning of wisdom. Trust God with all your heart and not lean on your own understanding. Wisdom is more precious than gold or silver. And God disciplines those he loves. Thank you. That's my sharing.